darkness, pressure, silence so thick it hums. Welcome to the abyss. 1,000 meters beneath the Australian waves, sunlight is but a faint memory. Here, where flesh would be crushed like sand castles under the tide, something stirs. A slow, fluid drift through eternal blackness. Eyes, plates of polished obsidian, pierce the gloom. Tentacles longer than a ute lie coiled, ready. A predator born in subterranean voids, unchanged for eons. The giant squid. Architeuthis ducks. One of the planet's last living mysteries. And tonight, we hunt not with harpoons but with lenses, lights, and science. A pursuit, not for conquest, but for wonder. Breathe deep, steady your heart. We descend, stream by stream, into the depths of Australia's oceanic soul. Long before science cast its net into the depths, before sonar and submersibles, there were tales. Salt-rhymed and wide-eyed, sailors spoke of horrors rising from the deep. Tentacles that breached the waves like serpents of the deep, curling around ships, dragging timber and bone into the drink. Madness, some said. Fever dreams brought on by weeks at sea. But the stories came from all corners of the globe. Too many to dismiss outright. The Norse feared the Kraken, a leviathan coiled beneath their longboats. In the Caribbean, it was the Lusca, half octopus, half shark, a nightmare hybrid lurking near underwater caves. In Japan, they whispered of a korokamui, a red-armed monstrosity said to blot out the sun as it rose from the sea. Even here, along the Australian coast, the stories persisted. Among the Yolngu of Arnhem Land, the mana haunted the depths, an ancient being with writhing arms able to stir the water into deadly spirals. It was not myth, it was reverence, and perhaps memory. For generations, these accounts were folded into folklore, shelved in dusty corners of maritime journals, or laughed off as exaggeration. Yet for every eye rolled in disbelief, there was another tale. A boat struck from below, a beast glimpsed beneath the surface, wounds upon whales no predator alive could explain. Then came the wreckage. The first true shift occurred not at sea but upon the shore. In 1879, along the beaches of Tasmania, fishers stumbled upon a corpse too vast to ignore. Rot softened, riddled with sand, but unmistakably otherworldly. A mass of flesh, the size of a wagon, with arms curling like seaweed around driftwood. At first, the press called it a hoax, but scientists came, measured, weighed, dissected, and what they found defied dismissal. Architeuthis ducks. Not the Kraken, not a god, but real, tangible, biological, and massive. Even today, most people will never see a giant squid alive. Not in an aquarium, not in a museum. Only dead on rare occasions, washed up and bloated on some remote beach. At best, a grainy clip from the depths, a flash of movement, a blur of crimson limbs. For though we now accept their existence, they remain elusive, choosing the vast, lightless void over shallow waters. Their biology is as strange as any science fiction. Their eyes, the largest in the animal kingdom, can spot the faintest glimmer of movement in utter blackness. Their tentacles, laced with tooth-ringed suckers, are strong enough to leave scars on the thick hide of a sperm whale. And yet, for all their power, they are not the hunters at the top of the deep. They are hunted. The sperm whale, their eternal nemesis, dives deep, perhaps deeper than any other mammal, driven by the scent of these colossal cephalopods. The battle between whale and squid is one we can only imagine, but the evidence remains. Whale carcasses return to the surface bearing circles of pain, a map of combat in scars, and in the belly of the great whale, remains of arms, beaks, proof of the titanic struggles unfolding in the crushing dark. In Australia's waters, sightings are rarer still. The Southern Ocean, frigid and vast, holds many secrets. But it is in the warmer currents off the eastern seaboard and down into the abyssal plains off Tasmania, where possibilities shimmer. Here, the sea drops sharply into trenches unfathomably deep. Canyons cut into the seafloor, remnants of ancient geological upheaval, form hiding places for all manner of abyssal life. Researchers from Queensland to Perth have pieced together fragments, bits of tentacle, DNA traces, sonar blips that suggest mass and movement too large for known fish. But science is slow, methodical, cautious. Each data point is hard-won, earned through years of painstaking labor, often with little to show. Still, the chase continues. Not with the fanaticism of myth, but with the quiet determination of those who know that truth, however improbable, lies just out of reach. And the deeper the ocean, the darker the water, the closer we may be to touching it. For in this watery continent's embrace, where red deserts meet turquoise shores and the drop into blue is sudden and eternal, the line between legend and biology thins. And down there, in the ink-black heart of the ocean, the old gods may still drift, tentacles unfurling, eyes forever watching. In the sterile glow of a marine lab, far from the pressure-warped world below, science tightens its grip. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead, monitors hum, and tank water pulses against glass in slow rhythms. It's here that fragments of the abyss are catalogued, tentacle cross-sections, eye lens samples, beak fragments so dense they could shear bone. Yet every specimen is incomplete. Every sample tells a half-story. The modern era of squid hunting began not with nets or spears, but with silence. Cameras, rigged with red filters invisible to abyssal life, drift motionless in the water column. Hydrophones tuned to frequencies no human ear can perceive listen for patterns. And it was in 2013, under the cloak of patience and darkness, that we saw it move, alive. Not a myth, not a corpse, but a being in full, unbroken motion. Captured by a camera called Medusa, suspended in the Pacific twilight, the first footage of a giant squid in its natural habitat was grainy, trembling, miraculous. It darted in from the edge of perception, sinuous, deliberate, red as blood, and twice as alive. The world blinked, then stared. Australia's scientists, scattered across universities from Brisbane to Perth, took notice. If it could be done there, why not here? After all, the southern hemisphere's abyss is vaster, colder, wilder. It conceals more than it reveals. Grants little, demands much. In 2020, the Gulf of Carpentaria gave up a secret, not an Architeuthis, but something close. 5 of them, gliding through dark water like phantoms. Bigfin squid, their tentacles trailing behind like silver filaments, longer than a man's height and thinner than reed grass. Observed, recorded, and then gone. That footage, reviewed frame by frame in labs across the country, ignited fresh obsession. Dr. Erin Fitzgerald, a quiet voice in a room of echoing ambition, leaned forward over a terminal. Her words, clipped by the rigors of academia, still trembled with awe. "It's not just what we find," she whispered once in interview. "It's where we found it. There's something about these waters, this seafloor, these currents. They hold more than we've allowed ourselves to imagine." Her team wasn't alone. Across the continent, efforts doubled. Grants were written, equipment retooled, and a new question replaced the old. Not if the giant squid existed, but where it hid. Beneath Australia's coastlines lie corridors of mystery. The Perth Canyon, a yawning scar in the continental shelf. The Diamantina Trench, stretching deeper than Mount Kosciuszko, is tall. These trenches, remnants of tectonic violence, cradle ecosystems that have never felt sunlight. They are Earth's lungs and stomach, teeming with bacteria that feed on chemical vents, worms that glow, fish with faces like stone gods. It is in these canyons that Architeuthis may sleep, but the pursuit is fraught. Between 300 and 1,000 meters, where light surrenders, exists a zone known among oceanographers as the twilight layer. Here, everything slows. Here, life adapts. The squid does not move with frenzy, but with purpose. It waits. It hunts in silence, avoiding light, repelled by noise. Sonar is a slap across the water. Lights are warnings. Movement is threat. To approach a giant squid requires more than patience. It requires absence, the illusion of vacancy. Enter the new tools of the trade, Autonomous vehicles nearly invisible to the senses of deep-sea life. They drift, silent and cold, mimicking the stillness of deep-water jellyfish. Some are coated with materials that absorb sonar. Others emit no light at all, relying on passive vision and scent trails. It is a technological ghost hunt. And yet, the squid remains elusive. Why? Perhaps because it chooses to. Perhaps it is not solitary, but rarely social. Perhaps it watches us as we watch it, declining our invitations not out of fear, but disinterest. Or perhaps we misunderstand the rhythms of the deep. For every failed expedition, the ocean answers with silence. For every hour of footage revealing nothing, another hypothesis fades. But every now and then, once every few years, a trace appears. A partial tentacle, a strange shadow, a camera brushed by something unseen. Enough to reignite the hunt. Australia's oceans are ancient. Their trenches predate human memory, and the creatures that inhabit them do not reveal themselves to timelines or curiosity. They exist on different terms, one measured in pressure and pulse, in the slow crush of millennia, not minutes. Still, we descend. Still, we wait. Because somewhere in the cold black, something watches back. The RV investigator cuts across the Tasman Sea like a silver scalpel, steady and deliberate. Beneath its hull, the ocean stretches down in blue-black layers, each one colder, older, more secretive than the last. On deck there's little romance, no flapping sails or heroic shouting, just blinking consoles, radio static, the constant hum of technology keeping humans alive where they don't belong. It's the dawn of another attempt. A canyon lies ahead, invisible from the surface, yet deeper than the Grand Canyon and twice as quiet. It is the kind of place where myths might go to sleep. James Morley stands on the bridge, one hand on a railing slick with morning spray. His eyes never leave the sonar readout. Lines shift and ripple, digital echoes of the void below. "We're over the drop," he murmurs. "This is it." The Kraken Hunter, a sleek black torpedo with fins of carbon and eyes of light, is prepared. Unlike its namesake, it does not hunt with arms or beak, but with patience and silence. It is autonomous, armed not with weapons but sensors. It slips into the water without ceremony. There's no splash, only a hiss, and then it's gone, sinking like a memory into the darkness. The team watches in silence. Below, the Kraken Hunter descends through layers of life, plankton, jellies, creatures with stomachs like paper and eyes like wet glass. At 200 meters, light begins to die. By 500, only ghosts remain. At 800, the world is velvet and cold. The vehicle activates its red light array. The glow reveals a slow ballet, creatures drifting without gravity or weight, pulsing with bioluminescence, tendrils curling like smoke. They do not flee, they do not fight. They simply are, floating in a realm where time forgets to pass. The isochemical lure is deployed, designed to mimic the pheromones of a female squid in season. It disperses in faint, pulsing trails. To the human eye, it's nothing. To a creature built for scent and pressure and touch, it's a siren song, subtle, persistent, ancient. Then, nothing. Just the silence of the deep. Minutes pass. Then hours. Scientists shift in their seats, coffee cools, screens flicker. Data scrolls endlessly, most of it meaningless. The abyss is indifferent to schedules. And then, a flicker. On camera 2, a shape crosses the periphery. Elongated, slow, too symmetrical to be drift, too graceful to be machine. "Pan starboard, Dr. A." Morley says, calm but cold with focus. The image shifts, and there, like a thought surfacing from a dream, it appears. An eye, huge, blacker than the water around it, ringed in pale silver. It holds no fear, no malice, only awareness. The cameras adjust focus, zooming slowly. A mantle emerges, fins that ripple like silk, arms, coiling, testing, curious. Architeuthis ducks, 10 meters long, maybe more. It does not flee, it does not attack. It simply observes. The room on the Investigator falls silent. Even the machines seem quieter, as if the entire ship is holding its breath. The squid circles once, then twice. It brushes the lure, tentacles caressing the water like fingers through long grass. Its chromatophores pulse faintly. Flashes of copper and black, a slow wave of changing pigment across its skin. Communication, perhaps, or thought, or simply reflex. For 21 minutes, the team watches. And then, without warning, it jets backward, a blur of movement, and vanishes. Not chased, not frightened. Finished. Above, in the control room, no one moves. Dr. Sophia Chen wipes her glasses slowly. Dr. Fitzgerald's hands tremble. Morley exhales, a sound closer to reverence than relief. "We found her," he says. "She let us see." Back on the surface, the ocean remains unchanged. Sunlight glitters across the swells, indifferent to what's passed below. But inside the Investigator, everything feels altered. There's a stillness not of fatigue, but of gravity, like a congregation after a sermon, touched by something sacred. They review the footage in near silence. Each frame reveals more than the eye can grasp in real time. The fine lines along the squid's mantle, the precise spacing of its suckers, the brief ripple of skin that hints at mood or instinct. It is not just data. It is a conversation, centuries overdue. No one says it aloud, but they all feel it. They've witnessed something holy. Later, Dr. Fitzgerald speaks softly to the archival recorder, her words barely above a whisper. "I spent most of my career in search of a question I didn't know how to ask. We weren't just trying to find the squid. We were trying to understand what it means to share a planet with something so profoundly other. And now, having seen her, I don't feel we're any closer. I feel further, but in the best possible way." Morley is more pragmatic, but no less moved. "What strikes me is how little fanfare there was. She didn't come crashing in. No lightning bolt, no monster roar, just presence. We spend billions looking outward into the stars, hoping for a signal. But here, beneath our feet, an alien life form drifted within reach, and it didn't need to speak to be heard. The squid didn't give them a display, no flaring arms or attacks. It approached, considered, and left. There's grace in that, and maybe a lesson. Not all discoveries shout. Some whisper. In the days that follow, the footage is backed up, archived, and sent to institutions across the world. Cryptobiologists, marine behaviorists, and cephalopod neurophysiologists will all take their turn. There will be papers, debates, maybe even awards. But none of that happens on the ship. Out here, in the vastness, the encounter is still sinking in. Sophia Chen takes one last look at the Kraken Hunter before it's secured. "It's funny," she says. "We built that machine to find something ancient, and now it feels like we're the ones being watched." Her words echo something unspoken, an idea forming in the minds of everyone aboard. That in the deep, observation is never one-sided. As night falls, the sky is clear, the sea calm. The Investigator drifts, its lights blinking against the darkness. In the distance, whales breach, low, soft sounds rolling across the water like thunder in the desert. Somewhere below, the squid may still be there, or it may be long gone, leaving no sign it ever existed. But for the crew, something remains. A trace, a pressure, a shift in their understanding of the world. They've touched the edge of something ancient and vast and alive, and nothing will ever quite feel the same. Sydney's coastline appears on the horizon like a mirage. From afar, it is all bustle and brightness. Ferries slicing through the harbor, cranes pivoting over container docks, joggers tracing the edges of morning. But aboard the Investigator, silence lingers. Not from exhaustion, but from a reluctance to let the deep recede. The footage will be dissected, certainly, scanned, clipped, annotated in scientific journals. Yet what they brought back isn't easily measured. There's no instrument for awe, no metric for wonder. They return not triumphant, but humbled. For Fitzgerald, the return is especially quiet. In the dark of her cabin, she replays the moment again. The eye, the coiling arms, the weight of its gaze. It wasn't just the fulfillment of a career, it was a confrontation. Not with the squid, but with herself, with the assumptions she'd carried, with the arrogance of knowing. In that silent stare from the abyss, she saw not a creature below her, but something beyond her. Something that had survived without us, beneath us, outside our myths and diagrams, content in its shadowed realm. And for a brief, astonishing moment, it let us in. At the University of Western Australia, news spreads like a current. Students crowd around monitors. Researchers whisper in hallways. The raw footage circulates through encrypted channels, each frame studied like a sacred text. Not just by marine biologists, but philosophers, psychologists, even artists. A poet from Melbourne, having seen the clip, writes a single line. It moved like time itself, remembering. The squid becomes more than subject, it becomes symbol. In public, little is said. The footage is embargoed as science requires, but rumors leak, headlines flicker. Giant squid filmed in Australian waters. Clickbait follows. The creature is called a monster, a leviathan, even a threat, but those who were there know better. It is not monstrous. It is precise, perfect in its place. Designed by evolution to vanish, to survive, to outlast. Still, one question echoes louder than the rest. What else is down there? If this creature, so immense, so alien, can glide unseen just beneath our shores, what else lurks in the canyons we've never mapped? What other minds wait in the black? For the ocean is not a wilderness. It is not empty. It is full, to the brim, with lives we do not understand. And among them, the squid is a sentinel, a reminder that we do not rule this planet. We only pass over it. Back in her lab, Fitzgerald begins work on a new paper. But more than data, she fills her margins with questions, notes that trail off, sketches, even dreams, because some encounters refuse containment. Some truths demand to be felt, not proven. And somewhere, perhaps 1,000 meters below, something stirs again. Not the same squid. Perhaps not even the same species. But another watcher in the dark. Another flicker in the ink. The hunt is not over. It has only changed. The months that follow, data is sifted and measured, models updated, hypotheses reformed. Architeuthis ducks, once the ghost of the ocean, now has coordinates, a time, a behavior. But the further the researchers analyze, the more they realize how much remains unknown. The squid in the footage did not match all expectations. Its movement was smoother, its tentacle pattern unusual. Even its coloring seemed inconsistent with prior specimens. Could it be a regional subspecies? A juvenile? Or something else entirely? An undescribed variant evolved in the dark folds of the Australian seabed. The academic world is cautious. Science is built on what can be replicated, not what can be glimpsed once. But for those closest to the project, doubt isn't a deterrent. It's a map. Morley proposes a second expedition, a deeper dive, a return to the same canyon, but this time with improved systems, refined lures, upgraded optics, AI-driven scanning. He argues that what they've captured is only a threshold, a toe dipped into a world we've barely begun to measure. Chen agrees, but adds a caution. The squid let us see it. That doesn't mean it'll do so again. Her statement hangs heavy. In the deep, nothing is owed. And yet something has changed. Interest grows, funding appears. Other nations take notice. The Japanese send questions. The Norwegians offer comparative data. There's talk of a global squid initiative, a cooperative effort to map, once and for all, the great cephalopods of the abyss. But for the Australian team, it's more than science, it's territory. These waters are not just coordinates on a map. They are ancestral, geological, emotional. For the Aboriginal communities along the northern and western coasts, the sea is not a boundary, it's kin. Stories of mana, of serpents and spirits beneath the tide, resurface in conversations between elders and scientists. For some, the sighting of the squid isn't a discovery, it's a confirmation. One Yolngu elder, when shown the footage, simply nods. It's been there long before you came. It will be there long after you go. This idea, that we're late to a world that already knows itself, humbles even the most seasoned researchers. In a symposium in Hobart, Fitzgerald presents her findings. She speaks not just of biology, but of reverence. "We didn't find the squid," she says. "It allowed us to find it." The room falls quiet, not out of agreement, but understanding. Back at sea, preparations for the next mission begin. The Kraken Hunter is revised, reprogrammed, softened. Its new model drifts more naturally, emits no mechanical noise. Its light array mimics starlight filtered through ice. The design brief is simple: be less machine, more shadow. As launch day nears, weather windows tighten. Equipment is tested, and always the team returns to the footage. The eye, the mantle, the slow, silent vanishing into black. They don't speak about what they hope to find. They know better. You don't summon the deep. You wait for it. And when it comes, if it comes, you listen. The second voyage begins with less ceremony and more precision. No press, no headlines. Just the quiet preparations of people who know that the sea grants no favors. The investigator sails under a winter sky, gray and stretched, wind moving in long sighs over the swells. The team is leaner now. Those who return do so with a sense of gravity, not anticipation. As they approach the same trench, instruments begin their low, murmuring hums. The Kraken Hunter, newer, quieter, nearer to nothing, is deployed again. But this time they alter the pattern. No lure, no bait, no simulation. Only presence. The descent is slower, more careful. There's a different feel in the control room, not of hunting, but of waiting to be received. At 1,000 meters, the seafloor rises into view. Ripples of silt, scattered rocks, the occasional flicker of bioluminescence. But this time, the silence feels fuller, as if the ocean is not empty but withholding. Hours pass, the camera glides, the room remains hushed. On screen, strange creatures pass by. A translucent eel, a cluster of shrimp clinging to a stone like coral, a jellyfish folding in and out like breathing. Then, without preamble, the screen dims. A shape, not sharp, not centered, just a presence moving beyond the field of view, large. The team doesn't flinch, they've learned. No sudden zoom, no shift in angle, only patience. And then it happens. Not one squid, two. They move like smoke over the seafloor, coiling, brushing, silent. One larger than the other, perhaps a male and female. Their movements are not aggressive. They drift, observe the vehicle, then begin to spiral, not in fear, but in a kind of slow dance. No one speaks. In that room, every breath is measured. Fitzgerald, watching, writes a single word in her notebook: ritual. The footage that follows is unlike anything ever recorded. Not a feeding, not a strike, but an interaction. One squid touches the other with a tentacle tip. The chromatophores shimmer in slow waves. There is no aggression, no flight, just motion, communication, presence. And then, again, they vanish. Not in alarm, indecision. The vehicle remains, drifting, alone now. And still, the water around it holds something. A presence even in absence. Back on the ship, the footage is copied, secured, but no celebration follows, only reflection. Chen, standing on deck, looks out over the waves. It's like they're not just animals, she says. They're beings. Intentional, measured, and they don't show themselves unless they choose to. Morley nods. They aren't ours to find. We just got lucky, twice. The return journey is quiet. No one wants to talk over what they've seen. There are too many questions and too few words. What does it mean for a creature to choose contact? What does it mean for a mind evolved in darkness to see us and remain unafraid? Science will have its answers, but the sea keeps its own. Sydney receives them with routine efficiency. Customs, unloading, archived drives passed hand to hand like fragile relics. But as the researchers step back onto concrete, there's a dissonance. The world feels too sharp, too loud, as if they've returned from a cathedral into traffic. No one says it aloud, but all feel it. They've crossed a boundary that others cannot yet see. Within the institutions, the footage is reviewed under fluorescent scrutiny. Scientists pause frames, zoom on detail, run spectral analysis. The two squid, their shapes, patterns, motions, are catalogued. But beyond the facts, something else emerges, a behavioral nuance, a choreography that defies simple interpretation. These weren't just animals reacting to a machine, says Dr. Fitzgerald at a closed seminar. They were aware of us, of each other, of the space between. It's a dangerous thing to say in scientific circles, but it resonates. There's something undeniably composed in the way the squid moved, as though they existed not by instinct alone, but by deliberation. The question arises again: what is intelligence in the deep? Octopuses, close cousins, are already considered among the most intelligent invertebrates on Earth. They learn, solve, remember, they play. But the squid, they have different priorities. They are pelagic, always in motion, evolved for escape and pursuit. What if intelligence isn't their highest trait? What if it's presence? That idea takes hold, that the squid isn't clever by our standards, but aware, fully, deeply attuned to the environment it inhabits, to movement, to pressure, to presence. And what if, in the abyss, presence is everything? One neurologist reviewing the footage writes in a margin, "Awareness without language?" Meanwhile, word spreads beyond the academic world. The footage is leaked softly to a select few journalists and filmmakers. Whispers begin. An exhibit is proposed, a documentary, a VR experience. Everyone wants a piece of the mystery, but Fitzgerald resists. "This wasn't a spectacle," she says in an interview that never airs. "It was communion." She retreats from the spotlight, returning to fieldwork. Morley accepts a role advising deep-sea exploration policy. Yoon is recruited by a private institute developing non-invasive underwater vehicles. The team dissolves quietly, like the trail of a squid jetting backward into the dark. But none of them leave unchanged. In their dreams, they revisit the eye. That unblinking, enormous gaze that held no threat, no need, only awareness. And in labs, in research stations, in lecture halls, a new respect takes root. Not for what we've discovered, but for what remains undiscovered, what chooses not to be seen, and what may never be. The Southern Ocean breathes as it always has, cold, vast, unknowable. Beneath its surface, the world continues, pressure crushing, darkness prevailing, creatures drifting in rhythms older than language. The squid, seen and gone, becomes once again a rumor. A shimmer in the deep. The investigator lies docked, its hull cooled, its decks scrubbed, but in the lower compartments, within drives locked in climate-controlled cabinets, the footage waits. A few minutes of film that changed everything, not in what it proved, but in what it suggested. And beyond proof, beyond study, something stirs. A shift in how we see the ocean. No longer a backdrop for human ambition, but a sovereign realm. Ancient, active, watching. For Morley, now miles inland, the silence of land feels different. He finds himself listening more, watching trees bend, sensing currents in wind. He no longer feels far from the squid, only above it. Chen, surrounded by machines, builds quieter systems. She dreams of making vehicles the sea won't notice. She stops thinking of exploration as intrusion. She starts calling it visitation. Fitzgerald disappears. Her name lingers in citations, in lecture notes, but her voice is absent. Some say she's working with a new team. Others believe she's returned to Arnhem Land, listening to stories older than science. Some of those stories speak of creatures with eyes like moons that come only when called without words. And the squid? It remains, not in labs, not in exhibits, but in water too deep for sunlight. It moves as it always has, eating, mating, watching, vanishing. A being shaped by the dark, not alien, not monstrous, simply untouched. Perhaps it will never be seen again, or perhaps, years from now, in another canyon, another eye will emerge from the black. Another moment of silence, witnessed by machines and measured by trembling hands. But even if not, something lingers. A change. Because to know the squid exists is not to own it. It is to accept that something immense, unknowable, and indifferent to us is still out there. And that is the deepest truth the ocean offers. That we are not alone. Not on this planet. Not in this biosphere. Not in the silence of the deep. In the outback, we say, the bush speaks. In the water, something older still whispers, "Are you listening?"